Hello and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve and the first video drop of the week is going to be focused around key performances from the game week just gone, who we should have on our radars and which assets should be avoided based on the football that we have just witnessed. We've got an incredibly quick turnaround before the game week 15 deadline, as that is only 1.5 days away from the time of recording. So we're going to need to consider our options quickly and keep a very keen eye on price changes, as I suspect they will occur a lot faster with a shorter time frame in between deadlines. Basically, there's going to be a lot more people making transfers either today or tomorrow or overnight tomorrow night before the deadline on Wednesday morning New Zealand time or Tuesday evening over in the UK. But before we get started, if you're not already a subscriber to this channel, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out. And if you enjoy the following content, make sure to give it a thumbs up. So we're going to start off with Newcastle. So one of my transfers in this week was Kieran Trippier, who I bought in knowing full well that he was on 4 yellow cards, and I paid very close attention to how he was going into challenges throughout that match, and he was incredibly disciplined. He's obviously well aware that he's on 4 yellow cards and how crucial he is to Eddie Howe's plans, and looks pretty determined to not earn a suspension. There were a couple of moments in the match where if he wasn't on 4 yellows, I suspect he would have gone into the challenges a little bit more heavily, but he did reserve himself in a few moments throughout that match. But to be fair, their defence, the Newcastle defence, was largely untroubled for the entirety of the match. In fact, it was one of the most dominant performances with only a 1-0 victory registered to Newcastle that I have seen in a while. Manchester United were absolutely played off the pitch. Some relevant stats here. It was 22 shots to 3 in favour of Newcastle. In and around somewhere around the 80-minute mark was when that stat came up. And then, of course, with the final, 5 to 10 minutes of the match and plus extra time added on, United threw everything that they could and mustered another 5 chances on, another 5 shots in the closing stages of the match. But the Newcastle defence was basically untroubled for the entirety of the match. So they came away with an expected goals conceded of 0.36. I don't think there was any really big clear-cut opportunities generated throughout, and a lot of what United was doing, again, for the second or for a number of games in a row now, is playing a bit more of a long ball game and trying to gamble on picking that ball back up. So I did in fact play Trippier and Lascelles in this match, as I have been watching Man United quite closely and was aware that they were playing the long ball game, and I thought Newcastle would be able to deal with this, no sweat. And they did. They held on to possession really well. The Manchester United in the middle of the park are just woeful. There was absolutely no control. I mean, Fernandes was absent. He was easily getting beaten by Joelinton and the other players in the middle of the park. It was a shoddy display from Manchester United all round. So in the Newcastle outfit, obviously their defenders are high up the pecking order, as their defence has been pretty resolute all season long. Trippier with 4 yellow cards, I would not at all be too worried about bringing him in. Yes, he may accidentally pick up that 5th yellow card and earn himself a suspension before the limit resets, and I think about game week 19 or 20, somewhere around there. But I wouldn't let you hold yourself back from making that transfer if you do in fact have the money to bring Trippier in. Lascelles also still a real solid option at 4.0 million. Very hard to tell when Botman is back, and for every week that people keep saying that they don't know when Botman's back and they are waiting on news for that before bringing Lascelles in, you're just wasting more and more weeks of not owning a very cheap asset in a very decent defense. Lascelles actually was very close to getting an assist in that match as well from a set piece, and so he is a tall man, he is a monster. Newcastle are a very tall team, and so he does have his fair share of opportunities to score from the set pieces. Livramento had an outstanding game, and basically that performance puts it in my mind that I very much doubt that Lewis Hall is going to play his way into the team in front of Livramento. He had Rashford pegged back on Rashford's right side or the left-hand side of the pitch for Newcastle for large parts of the match. Rashford just did not look like he could deal with it. He didn't want to get back into the positions he needed to track his runner, and Livramento just ran riot down that left-hand side all game. So he is another that you could look to bring in while Dan Burn is still injured. And even when Dan Burn comes back, I'm not so sure he's going to get chucked straight back into the starting 11 if Livramento continues to play like that. So from a defensive point of view, Newcastle are looking really sound. Where have they got on my fixture ticker? Oh, down here. So I'll just take this back down to up until, I don't know, about game week 19 or so. So Newcastle, top of the fixture ticker when ordered by the next, 5 game weeks. I'm currently showing game week 14 as the game hasn't actually completely updated yet. It still thinks it is game week 14, and it's got all the scores on screen for the game week, showing green as a win, white as a draw, and red as a loss, if you are not familiar with my fixture ticker. But they now play Everton away in 15, Tottenham away. I think Tottenham are going to score against every team in the league, and so that is not a great fixture for the Newcastle defenders. But then they have Fulham at home, Luton away, and Forest at home. I'm expecting probably 4 clean sheets out of the next 5, with Newcastle probably conceding to Tottenham in game week 16. But 4 out of 5 fixtures is pretty good going for the defence. These are also amazing attacking fixtures as well, and part of the move that I did make this week was to bring in Isak, unfortunately for a hit for Watkins, who did end up playing, got a very jammy assist, and then scores an absolute wonder goal off his head, which is probably one of the hardest header type goals that he's going to score. Even though he misses headers from like 3 yards out, he continues to be a bit of an outlier, I suppose, when it comes to... Anyway, we're getting off track here. Isak Isak wasn't actually too largely involved in a lot of the attack. I know there was 22 shots or so that went in for Newcastle, but I don't remember any clear-cut opportunities for Isak throughout the match. But when they're attacking that well, those chances are almost certainly going to fall to Isak. There was also a handball for, I think it was Dalot, who tried to control the ball in the penalty area, kicks it into his own hand, which does control the ball for him. VAR looks at it, doesn't award a penalty. That would have been an Isak penalty all day. I don't understand why that one wasn't in fact given, but who knows. regardless, Isak should definitely still be at the forefront of your thoughts for the upcoming run of fixtures, and Gordon too, also looking to be playing very centrally, almost a second striker. He did get the one goal in, well, the only goal scored in the match. Great ball across from Trippier. Gordon, easy tap home, but was reading the game and in the right positions as he needed to be. From the Manchester United side of things, they should be far from our thoughts for FPL, apart from maybe a cheap defensive option in Maguire to play off the bench in some of the easier fixtures coming up, as I do suspect that they will be able to keep some clean sheets against the likes of maybe Bournemouth at home, maybe West Ham away, maybe Forest away in 20, and maybe Wolves away in 22. It's not great reading from Manchester United in terms of fixtures, and with the performances they're putting up, I would just put them as a hard avoid. However, Maguire did start his 10th game in a row for United, which I would not have predicted 10 game weeks ago. And like I said, no one was running the midfield for United. There was very little control, and they were still resorting to the long ball way too often. So just a hard avoid there. So next on the list is Arsenal. And in the video last week, was it last week? Or whenever Arsenal came up against Brentford, I did say that I was quite worried about the creativity of Arsenal's attack and the fact that they were very slow to move the ball around, the outside of the defensive shape that Brentford had put down, which meant that both Saka and Martinelli were often finding themselves marked by 2 or even 3 men by the time they picked up the ball on the wings. However, this time around, they were facing the low block of Wolves, who played 5-3-2 for large parts of the match when out of possession, which is identical to what Brentford played. However, they were much slower at getting the second man out to Saka and Martinelli on the wings, which provided both wingers way more space to work with, which helped both Saka and Martinelli flourish in the match. Now, not only that, I did notice that Saka was way more confident in taking on his man in this match, even when he had 2 men marking him. So in the Brentford match, he looked up and had 2 men marking him, decided he didn't want to take them on, and then passed the ball back inside to work it back across the midfield to go out to the other wing. But this time around, he was actually taking on 2 men at a time, trying to run in between the 2 closing defenders and thread passes through in tight spaces. So he was playing with a lot more confidence, and something that we definitely want to see out of such an expensive asset in midfield. I did say I would be keeping an eye on the likes of Arsenal's attack, because Saka could be on the chopping block. But that has fully gone from my thoughts now, as they attacked way more cleanly throughout this match, and he is an easy hold moving forward. They probably just had a bit of an off day against Brentford, although Brentford are just a much better defensive team compared to Wolves when they both played the low block. Also, Odegaard had a much better game than the match against Brentford as well. He did have a few wayward passes, but he was much more involved throughout the match and was trying some creative through balls, as well as pinging the ball about quite effectively. So he did lose the ball quite a bit, but at least he was attempting some of the creative passes, which I think Arteta must have just said to the front line, look, you guys have to actually attack after watching that Brentford game. So I think they've just taken the words from Arteta and actually had a go at them, which is what we want to see. We want to see fluid attacking football, and Arsenal can put together some beautiful football. If you have a look at Odegaard's goal, That is what I was talking about that was missing in the game against Brentford. Very quick passes, lots of pace on the ball, heaps of one-touch passing to end up at Odegaard in and around the penalty spot with a first-time finish, low hard across the keeper and into the far post. Arsenal's attack is looking decent, but it is their defence that is looking incredibly resolute. They were extremely unlucky to concede in that match against Wolves. I was obviously celebrating, as I have not yet invested into the Arsenal defence. They are on my list of players to bring in moving forward. And little side note, I am looking at the prospects of selling Gahey to Saliba for this weekend. Definitely after watching those two performances from Arsenal. I don't even know, what was the expected goals conceded? 0.71. That seems a lot higher than what I actually witnessed in the game. I might have to actually double check how that has been built up. But yeah, Arsenal's defence way up the list alongside the likes of Newcastle and City. And we'll go into a little bit about Liverpool a little bit later on as well. So that's it from Arsenal. The key assets we should be looking at here, it's still obviously Saka. I would probably still be swerving Martinelli, as although I do know he did start attacking a lot better in this game, he just doesn't have as many routes to points as some of the other midfielders that are available in other squads around the place. Obviously the defence, so Saliba, probably Gabriel, although he did miss a game in about game week 10, I think it was. Gabriel has a little bit of rotation threat. Yeah, it was game week 10, Sheffield United, so one of the easier fixtures Gabriel was rested for. And with the fixtures of Luton away, Luton away could be a game, I guess, where Gabriel gets rested. Villa away, I would doubt it. Brighton at home, I'd probably doubt that too. And West Ham are all pretty good attacking teams. So Gabriel is probably worth the gamble, even though he is a slight rotation threat. But I would be more inclined to outlay the money for someone like Saliba, where you just have absolutely no worries about him getting rotated. Watch him get benched for the Luton game, though, now that I've said that, of course. So Brentford, next on the list, having watched the difference in defensive prowess between Brentford and Wolves against Arsenal, Brentford are just amazing at deploying the low block. This puts Brentford much higher up the pecking order for me in terms of defensive options. They do have a very nice 3 games coming up. Maybe not so easy from a defensive point of view, but given how they defended against Arsenal, I think both Brighton and Villa will struggle to break them down in game weeks 15 and 17. Sheffield United, obviously, I don't think they will be scoring at all. The issue with Brentford, though, is that they do have the blank in 18 and a potential double in game week 20. Now, if that double is scheduled in for game week 20, the second game is against Man City. So not ideal. They will also maybe be without Mbumo. I don't know if there's actually anyone else in their squad that may be off to AFCON or the Asia Cup. So they may potentially even be down a couple of first team members for that second game in the double. But based on how they are able to defend and put up a low block, especially against those tougher teams, there's no reason why Brentford might not be able to keep a clean sheet against Man City in that second game of the double. So if you are able to hold a Brentford defender through game week 18, so this may be for those of you that have a much stronger bench where you can rotate quite easily, those of you who may in fact be free hitting in game week 18, you could look at the likes of either Pinnock or Ben Mee, who actually scored against Luton this weekend. But both are centre-backs, so your only real shot at any returns apart from clean sheets is set pieces, which are far less frequently scored than, say, an assist from a wing-back. However, with the injuries in the Brentford squad, the left-back that they have currently playing is Janelt, who's listed as a midfielder in FPL, and Godos was playing right back for Brentford, who is also listed as a midfielder. So those two are just complete no-goes. So if you are going to invest in the Brentford defence, it really is only going to be the centre-backs that you are potentially looking at. So next on the list is Cole Palmer. So I'm not going to go into too much about Chelsea overall, apart from Cole Palmer, who was surprisingly benched for the match. We hadn't heard anything about this before the deadline, but Pochettino was pressed about this in an interview, and it reads, "Then finally, when pushed for an answer on Palmer, Pochettino added, 'He felt something during the week and we don't want to take a risk. We have too many games ahead. Now we are going into a very busy period and we don't want to take a risk.'" So that's all well and good, but he still came onto the pitch, which makes absolutely no sense to me. So Palmer came on with 24 minutes to go. If he had been subbed on about 2 minutes earlier, he would have been on the pitch when the penalty was awarded, and he would have almost certainly taken the penalty instead of Enzo Fernandez. So that was incredibly frustrating from an FPL point of view. But if he felt something during the week and they didn't want to take a risk on him, but they still put him onto the pitch for the last 25 minutes, it doesn't quite add up. The only thing that I can think of here is potentially it was tightness in, say, like a hamstring or a calf or something like that, and they didn't want to start him and have to play him for at least an hour or so. I mean, Chelsea did go down to 10 men after, I think it was about 45 minutes when Gallagher was sent off for his second yellow. Don't know what he's doing sliding in there for that second yellow, by the way. So potentially Pochettino brought him on to try and get a bit more control with only 10 men on the pitch, as Palmer's hold-up play and ball distribution is incredibly good. And potentially he thought that they could get away with just playing Palmer for 25 odd minutes as long as he'd had a really decent warm-up if it was due to tightness or something. But it doesn't quite make sense based on the comments that we heard and the fact that he made it onto the pitch. So it's something we are going to have to keep an eye on. Hopefully it's nothing, but definitely something we will need, well, just need to keep an eye on moving forward. There's nothing we could do about it now. He has played. I will not be selling him. I will be starting him in game week 15. And I guess just fingers crossed that he does start from the start of the game. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a dry throat coming on. So Spurs. So Son, who a lot of managers were looking to get rid of ahead of Man City. I said in my video last week that I had absolutely no plans of getting rid of Son at all. I'm going to be holding him right up until he leaves for the Asia Cup in about game week 21. He continues to show his clinical finishing and vital importance to the Spurs attack. Spurs are just going to play an attacking style of football regardless of opposition, and that will afford Son plenty of chances to score even without Maddison in the team. Now, last week I did put forward Kulusevski as a decent option in the Spurs midfield, as he was shifted across to that cam role when the 4-3-3 formation didn't work out as the first thing Postecoglou tried after Maddison was injured. Kulusevski went into that role 2 weeks ago, played it very well, and I put him forward as a decent option for a Bowen replacement to someone in the comments on the last video. Kulusevski played the cam role again, earning himself a goal and an assist and maximum bonus against City in this match. He is a very slight differential that you could look to bring in if you are looking for something a little bit different. Now, Son managed a goal and an assist and got 2 bonus points, even though he conceded an own goal, showing that he is doing things on the pitch really well, which add up amazingly for the bonus point system. He is the talisman of the team. Everything is revolving around Son, and I have absolutely no plans to get rid. And finally, Liverpool. So I just watched the Liverpool game this morning, which I had Salah as captain for. Now, I did say in the video last week when I was considering who to bring in for Watkins between Isak and Darwin, that Darwin was going to need a lot of chances in order to score a goal. And throughout this match, he did have a lot of chances and managed to either hit the crossbar or blaze them all wide. 2 of which Salah put on a plate for him, which would have been really good for my captaincy had Nunez actually sunk them. Extremely frustrating from a Salah captain's point of view, but also probably very frustrating for those of you who brought Nunez in. Now, that's just what Nunez does. His shot selection is kind of all over the place. He is more likely to lash at the ball rather than use some sort of controlled finish to hit an area of the goal in which most goals are scored. So you're thinking if you're on the right side of the goal, you want to hit the ball low hard with your laces if the ball's on the ground, across the keeper and into the far post. When you're going for the near post, you want to most often use a side foot, which will be way more controlled and still have enough power to go in. But Nunez just does wherever his foot manages to meet the ball is what it seems like. So for those of you who are potentially looking to sell Watkins for his 2 tough games coming up, which is Arsenal and City, I think, I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you are looking to get rid of Watkins, I would still put Isak higher up the pecking order than Nunez, as Isak is more clinical and has penalties. Both play for very attacking teams, though. Diaz had a very off game in this match, but managed to stay on the pitch for the whole game because there wasn't really anyone to replace him. I think if Jota was fit and ready, he probably would have taken Diaz off and subbed Jota on. Now, I mean, Diaz was he was working. He's a very hard worker. Like, you got to give him credit. He works extremely hard on the pitch, but there was just so many passes that just weren't working out for him in that match. He was trying little flick things and his body in awkward body positions when he was actually trying to lay the ball off, and things were just going all over the show. He was losing possession quite a lot more than he should be. So I don't know if I would necessarily be recommending Diaz as a purchase, and he has limited prospects in terms of goal involvement. But Liverpool do attack quite well, and I could see when Diaz is on his game, he can be a bit of a threat moving forward. And with Jota out, he is basically about as nailed on as it looks, as I think he was destined to be pulled off in that match, especially when Liverpool were, touch and go as to whether or not they were actually going to win that game. But the man who played the best, I think, was Trent Alexander-Arnold, who had an outstanding game. He was all over the pitch, back to pinging his long crossfield balls that were hitting the mark. They weren't going wayward. They were perfectly driven above all the bodies in the middle, landing perfectly at the feet of the men on the far wing, providing good attacking movements to the Liverpool team. Hit a perfect free kick, which was unlucky to have hit the bar and then go off the back of Leno's head to go in. So that would be an own goal with an assist for Trent rather than the goal itself. But then he scored the winner with an amazingly struck shot. He looks to be playing with confidence and has 3 very good defensive fixtures coming up too. But he is going to be incredibly hard to work into our squads at 8.0 million. If you can get him in, he could be a really good differential for Sheffield United away, Crystal Palace away, and that Manchester United at home game is still a really good defensive fixture for Liverpool before they have to go and play Arsenal at home in game week 18. Small note on Kelleher, he looked well, he's not too confident with his feet. I think the second goal. There was a goal there where he just rushed out and kind of dove at the ball. The toe poke from, I think it was Tete, is it? That went to hit his back foot. If he had just planted himself in the right position rather than trying to rush out to the man, I think he would have saved that. He ended up getting megged by the goal. Liverpool might lose some clean sheets with Kelleher in net. Obviously, he's a massive downgrade from Alisson, who was the best goalkeeper in the game. But I do not think that would hold me back from investing in the Liverpool defence if you are so inclined to do. So that is it for this video. So if you enjoyed this video and got something out of it, press the like button and consider subscribing. And if not, that's alright too. I appreciate you watching. And until next time, cheers.